Welcome to the IRS Solution Attorney Show. If you have problems with the IRS, don't focus on the negative, focus on the solutions. With the IRS Solution Attorney, Darrin T. Mish. For over 15 years, he's been helping taxpayers with IRS problems reclaim their lives and their financial stability. Now, here's your host of the IRS Solution Attorney Show, Darrin T. Mish.
Good morning. This is the IRS Solution Attorney Show. I am the IRS Solution Attorney, Darrin T. Mish.
And this is your co-host, Katrina Madewell. That voice is getting a little bit better there. You're kicking that cold to the curb, Darrin?
Yeah, a couple of weeks ago, we had the guest on, and the guest was really great. And the great thing about having the guest, at least for me, was I didn't have to talk too much because I was busy hacking in the background.
I know. We could catch some of that, the microphone, even though it was muted. But
there might be a little bit of coughing today, but I'll try to remember to push the cough button. Because, I don't like to be driving around and hearing some radio guy just like hacking into the microphone. It's just not a pleasant sound.
Today's show is actually fun. Like, oftentimes when Darrin and I get here, I have no idea what we're going to talk about. I have no idea what the show is going to be about. And I have no idea what's on the outline. As a matter of fact, Darrin just emailed it to me about 2 minutes before we hopped on the air here. But it's a really fun topic.
Today's show is all about a recent development in the law where the IRS, if you owe significant tax debt to the IRS, so $50,000 or more, the IRS can actually revoke your passport and prevent you from traveling internationally. Now, if that wasn't bad enough, there's 5 states whose driver's licenses don't have they don't meet some federal compliance standard, and so TSA will not let citizens of those 5 states that have those 5 states' driver's licenses fly domestically. So they have to have a passport in order to fly domestically. And so if you live in one of those 5 states, in Florida, here's a spoiler alert, okay? Florida is not one of those states. But if you live in one of those 5 states, you can't even travel domestically.
How come you didn't tell us this sooner?
Well, what happened is the law passed in 2015, right? And then it takes a long time sometimes for the regulations to promulgate and for them to figure out how they're going to enforce the law. And I didn't say anything about it before because we didn't even know if they were going to enforce it. Occasionally, something controversial like this will pass and just Congress won't enforce it. For example, without getting too political, the funding for, Trump's wall along the southern border was actually passed over 10 years ago. And they just didn't bother to do anything about it.
I was going to say, oh, here we go. But that changes the dynamic. Your next sentence there.
Yeah, I'm not criticizing anybody in that. I'm going to remain neutral as far as that goes. It's just an example where Congress passed the law and then nobody ever tried to enforce the law. And so imagine this. Imagine, you were an international business traveler. You work for a software company or something, and you go to Eastern Europe quite a bit. And maybe 3-4 times a year because you need to meet with your development team and whatnot. And you owe maybe $100,000 in tax to the IRS and you haven't dealt with it. And you go down to the airport and you're about to get on your international flight to the Ukraine or wherever. And, you're trying to go through, you're at the ticket desk there and they go, sorry, we just ran your passport and it's been revoked for IRS tax purposes.
I'm in shock. Like, I didn't even know that. Did we talk about that before on the show? I don't remember.
I don't think we've ever spoken about it. And it's just a horror story. Or, what about this?
So literally that's how it goes down. Like, they're there, they got their ticket all purchased, they're ready to go somewhere, even to another state.
As far as we know, that's how it's going to go down. Now let's talk about
this is new.
Yeah, this is brand new. It actually it's actually gone into effect just in the last few days.
Oh my gosh.
In the last week or so. And think about this.
We should have had somebody from TSA in the studio to talk about this because they've had some training before the last 2 years.
Oh, I'm sure they're just riveting to listen to too. But anyway, the 5 states that have the non-compliant driver's licenses are Illinois, Minnesota, Missouri, New Mexico, and Washington. Now, here in Florida, there's probably not all that many people from New Mexico and Washington because they're so far away. But we know for sure, as a matter of fact, that there are people listening to us right now on the radio live that they're from Illinois, Minnesota, and Missouri, that are snowbirds that are just down here for the winter. And
so
if they
theoretically speaking, they might not be able to fly home. Is that what you're saying? That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, if they don't have they have a non-compliant driver's license, so they can't travel on that. And if their passport is eventually revoked by the State Department because of IRS tax debt, then they're not going to be able to fly home. They're literally going to have to drive home or take a bus, or I guess there's still trains, right?
Yeah. People take the train, not a lot, but they do. It's actually kind of cool.
I think it's only a couple $100 from coast to coast on the train. The problem is it takes like 3 days.
So let me ask you this. My ex-wife, is in Dallas, but she lives in Chicago. And she's not going to go back home until March 1st. So do I need to call her and tell her anything that she might be stuck?
Well, does she have, I don't know if I should ask this, but does she have a significant tax problem?
Oh, no,
If she has
not that.
IRS
Oh, so you
debt,
got to have that
You
problem.
gotta have the significant tax problem.
You might not know about it,
Oh,
Pat.
I would know about it. Trust me.
Yeah, for all the folks who don't have a tax problem who are listening, doesn't matter. You're fine.
Right, okay.
There's no, your
What
passport's
if
not
it's a
going to be revoked.
snafu? Like we were talking, 2 weeks ago about the guy with the stolen filed tax returns. I guess that doesn't apply for
I
them, right? Or do
guarantee-
you think that's going to happen?
I absolutely, positively guarantee that there will be snafus. There will be passports that were revoked erroneously. And I guarantee you in about, here's a guess, 18 months, I'll start to have train wreck stories about how we unraveled that and we got it all fixed. Because every time there's a program like this, implemented by the federal government, every single time there's problems, bureaucratic snarls and problems like that. The interesting thing is that now you've got two federal agencies involved. You've got the IRS, which is Treasury, and then you've got the State Department who issues and revokes passports. So those two agencies are going to have to talk to each other, which I think is going to be fascinating because they're not going to talk to each other well.
They already don't talk.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even Social Security and Internal Revenue Service don't talk to each other particularly well, and they're very closely related if you think about it. But so this is going to be pretty interesting, I think.
So why aren't we hearing more about this on the mainstream media?
Well, because you kind of have to be a tax geek, or you have to be a CNN junkie or something.
That's kind of a big deal.
Yeah, I think it's a big deal. The law passed actually on December 4th, 2015. It was called the Fixing America's Surface Transportation Act, or the FAST Act. Now, you have to love the Orwellian way that the federal, the lawmakers name their things. The Fixing America's Surface Transportation Act. Yeah, let's throw a place in there where you get your passport revoked if you have tax debt. Funny thing is, there's probably members of Congress who are going to have their passports revoked because there's probably members of Congress who have significant tax debt. But
Oh, that's funny.
Except for they're probably exempt. They probably exempted themselves. It's probably a deep in a regulation or something. But the law
Aren't
also
they exempt from everything deep in the regulation somewhere?
We know they're exempt from Obamacare. But anyway, the law also gave the State Department the power to revoke your passport if you're a delinquent taxpayer. So what does delinquent taxpayer mean in this context? Well, it means that you owe more than $50,000 in tax debt and that you haven't you have a tax lien filed and you haven't either entered into an offer in compromise, have one pending, or you haven't entered into an installment agreement. So a lot of my clients, when they come into the office, they just have unresolved tax debt that's just been sitting out there for sometimes 6-8 years. It's just sitting, it's just been sitting around. They haven't done anything proactive to deal with it. They owe every single year more and more and more and more. And a lot of times the IRS doesn't have the manpower to, work all those cases.
So how effective do you think this is actually going to be? Like how accurate, I guess, do you think it will be if someone has a tax problem? They got this flight booked. Maybe they're in one of these states. Maybe they're not, or they're taking, they're going to Mexico for vacation, whatever it is. How accurate do you think it's going to be that they will actually catch their passport hold?
I think I could do it with a laptop. Once you had a good database, I don't think it's going to be that hard. The problem is the government screws up so much of what they do. The one thing that, as I'm looking at Pat, who likes to go on cruises, the one thing I'm thinking about is, okay, forget about the international traveler who's going to the Ukraine. What about the guy getting on the cruise ship here in Tampa? And he just wants to go to Cozumel, Grand Cayman, and wherever for the weekend.
The deal with cruises, like Tampa, and I cruise a lot. I know Pat likes to cruise. You don't need your passport. If you're leaving from a domestic port like Tampa and you come back to Tampa, you don't need your passport.
Because you all you need is a driver's license that shows
and a birth certificate or another form. Yeah.
Okay, that's true.
Now, if you like, for example, a year and a half ago, Chris and I took that cruise where we left from Port Canaveral and we ended up in San Juan, you absolutely need a passport for that. And it doesn't even have to be San Juan. It could be like Texas. You would still need a passport because you you hit an international.
You started in the country, you left the country, and came back to a different
It's a different port of call.
I'll
right?
tell another story when we come back from the break that a lot of people aren't aware of, that when you go on a cruise, what else happens if you're gone for 5 to 7 days? Tell you something else that we found out that happens on cruises.
I'm trying to think if I remember what he's talking about.
Oh.
All right. We're not going to hijack your show, but we'll talk about cruises a little bit because you brought it up, Darrin. So,
And we can talk about the Florida State Fair today.
It's all good.
Is it today?
Started today.
I drove by there this morning. There's all kinds of, midways all up, and everything's ready to go.
I would say I'm slow, but I think I'm just busy.
Deep fried wedding cake.
It's always something deep fried. You're listening to the IRS Solution Attorney Show. We're glad you're here this morning. Thanks for listening. We're going to have some fun when we come back after the break. Back in just a moment.
Welcome back to the IRS Solution Attorney Show. I am the IRS Solution Attorney, Darrin T. Mish.
And I'm your co-host, Katrina Madewell. Thanks for sticking with us through the break. And today's show is all about passports and how yours can be frozen if you got some tax debt. I don't know if you heard the first part of the show.
Yeah, we're talking about how if you owe significant tax debt to the IRS, which they define as $50,000 or more, they can actually revoke your passport and prevent you from traveling internationally. And then there's the other side effect that if you live in one of 5 different states, you can't fly on your driver's license from that state, so you have to have a passport. And if it's revoked by the State Department for the failure to pay income tax, you won't be able to fly domestically either.
And this is fresh. This is like brand new data as of the last few days.
And something else they do.
So we were talking about cruises.
Right.
So what are you talking about, Pat?
On a cruise. And they check the names, the addresses, the social security numbers. And if you are wanted, you need to do anything, and they've been looking for you. When you come back into port, they knock on the door. And it's the law.
I actually have a funny story with
happened
details.
twice.
So if you're wanted, you get to go on your cruise, but when you
they
come
let you
back,
go, but they check everything because there's 3,000 people on a boat, and of those 3,000, there could be 1 or 2 people that have been wanted, or they're trying to get out of town for 7 days till things cool off. So they check the manifest, and it's funny in the mornings, at 7:00 as soon as the ship gets in, you'll see. You always watch, and if you see them coming on the boat, you just watch the hallways, and they knock on doors.
See, it would be my ideal. Like, I would totally get a condo right there in Channelside to watch the ships come in. And when I'm retired and not working, like, that would be my idea of entertainment. Because if you've ever been on a cruise, Pat, and know you know what I'm talking about, we do this, no lie. And it's not mean. It's just funny because people are so dumb. They get so drunk and they get just lost in these ports. And it never fails. Maybe not the first day, but usually the second port of call, you'll see somebody running up to the boat that has missed the boat.
What's wrong with that?
They're not waiting for you.
What is wrong with that? That's it.
It's funny.
That's what I do every trip.
You do? Okay,
I'm one of the last 3 that get on the boat.
So we were in Belize on a cruise, and my wife and kids and I went on like an off cruise sort of tour, where you take a boat up into the jungle or whatever. And the tour operator was having trouble that day, and they just barely got us back to the launch, to the point where we were running to the launch to make sure that we could get back. And
we've been one of the last
I was
people.
at the point where when I was in the car on the way back, when they were driving us back, I was looking at which credit cards I had in my wallet, because I'm like, we're going to have to take a plane from here because we are in big trouble here. But as far as your little warrant story there, I actually have a buddy who lives out of state, and he goes on a lot of cruises. He was in Fort Lauderdale, and they came and knocked on his door at 7 a.m. They took him to a holding cell, and he was there for hours over a failure to have a saltwater fishing license in his possession from like 10 years prior.
Are you kidding me, Darrin?
And they held him in custody for hours, and finally they decided, it's not really worth it, and they let him go. But he called me afterwards, and he's like, what do I got to do to take care of this? And I was like, oh, it's easy. We're going to call the clerk down in that county that the citation was issued. We're going to find out exactly how much money it is, and we're going to have you write a check and, pay the thing off.
So he got a citation for not having a fishing license, and he was wanted? Is that what you're saying?
For like $130 fine. Now, number one, we talk about how you really shouldn't even have to have a saltwater fishing license. But then again, he didn't have one, and he got a citation, and then he blew it off. And so he ended up in that holding cell down at the port in Fort Lauderdale.
I have a worse story. I have a worse story than that. I was on a 7-day cruise, and the second day we land in port somewhere, down by Belize somewhere, and helicopters are circling the boat as we're coming in to the port, and they took a mom and dad off the boat with a daughter that was 19 years old, and they had 4 younger kids. And they took the mom and dad on the second day of a 7-day cruise off the boat and left the adult, 19-year-old, to watch the rest of the kids for the rest of the cruise.
What? Where did they go? Nobody knows anything?
They went to jail.
For something.
And I don't know what it was, but could you imagine?
No.
They're your parents taking off. I mean, they had a helicopter following them in, and they were right on that boat.
But you had a good time just speculating for the rest of the 7-day cruise.
Well, everyone did.
Exactly.
Everyone was talking.
We had a cruise, literally, like it was out of Tampa. 2 people. We weren't even past the Skyway. 2 people got, like one of them but 2 people got airlifted. The second one, the boat actually turned around and was headed back toward the port. I think we were past the Skyway on that one. And the helicopter landed on the boat and picked people up that's like, talk about entertainment. Like we were going to the gym and everybody's just standing out there watching what's going on. You can't help it. So this will surely be some entertainment, if they have these situations where you can't fly. Like people are going to be standing around the airport just watching
have
what's
your
going
checkbook
on.
ready when you go through TSA and write a check to the TSA screener.
I don't think that's
we
work.
don't know what will happen if, let's say this happens a lot. I mean, I talk to lots of expatriates, Americans that are living overseas, and they have to file a tax return every year, and a lot of them don't because they don't know about it and whatever. But let's say you're an expat, you live in, Thailand most of the year, and your passport gets revoked. There's no way for you to know that your passport's been revoked because you're living in a hut in Thailand. You don't exactly give the State Department your forwarding address. They go ahead and revoke your passport. You go ahead to get on the plane in Phuket or Bangkok or wherever, and they're like, nope, sorry, your passport's revoked. I don't know what will happen there, and I think we have to just wait and see. I don't think constitutionally they can keep you outside of the United States if you're a U.S. citizen. But what I think will happen is they'll let you fly back in. And I'm sure that customs trip, when you hit the States, there's going to be a lot of fun. And then I think your passport's going to be revoked at that point in time until you deal with the tax problem.
So the person that you described, so they're living in Thailand or whatever, let's say they're not making any money. They're just living in Thailand, and
if there's no income, then there's no, there's no requirement to file a tax return. But how many people do you know that literally have zero income? Now, if you're just
interest income, right? So like, let's say they're living off interest off of money they put in the market. They have to file a tax return if they don't.
If it exceeds those really low thresholds. I have lots of friends who are internet marketers. Their whole entire business is online, so they can live wherever. I have buddies that live in Colombia and all over the place, and those guys have got to file tax returns. Now, there's because Americans, we have to file a tax return on our worldwide income. So if you're in Colombia, even if he was making money in Colombia, for example, then he still has to file the tax return. Now, there's a foreign income exclusion, and right now, I forget how much it is. Let's say it's $95,000 or $105,000, something like that. If the source of income is in Colombia for that guy, then he doesn't have to pay tax on that first $105,000.
So if you're living abroad and you're making money there.
Yeah, a more common example would be Saudi Arabia. Let's say you're a petroleum engineer in Saudi Arabia, and they're paying you, $20,000 a month, which would not be uncommon. So then you don't have to pay tax on the first $105,000, but then you have to pay tax after that, and you also get a credit for all the tax you paid in Saudi Arabia, assuming we have a tax treaty with that country, and we do for most. So that's what happens to U.S. people who are in foreign countries. They sometimes go years without filing their tax returns because they don't know any better. And there's another trap for people who are living abroad, and that is you have to file a form declaring the existence of a foreign bank account, period, every year. And if you don't, there's harsh penalties. You can go to prison. You can be penalized up to 75% of the money in the bank account at any given point, the high balance.
This makes me crazy because it makes me think that Big Brother wants to know every little thing you have, everywhere you have anything.
I see you're finally catching on.
I know. I'm just saying, but I didn't know that part.
Yeah, but you don't have a tax problem, so you have nothing to worry about.
I don't, but it still makes me mad. It irritates me.
Yeah, I think the solution is to, get with the congressman and get him to change the law. Now, here's the problem now, okay? How sympathetic do you think Congress is going to be to people who owe $50,000 or more in tax debt? They're not going to be very sympathetic.
Here's the thing, though. We talk a lot on this show about people that have a tax problem because that's your primary business, right? So we share stories and changes in the law on the news and that sort of stuff that are around that. And like, you probably remember one time I joked around on the air and I said, I should just transfer $10,000 back and forth just to irritate somebody that's watching that. Like, remember, just as a joke. But the whole point
nice
is...
joke.
The whole point... I mean, I didn't, but I'm just saying, like, why should somebody like me be harassed when I didn't do anything? I pay my taxes. Who cares if I want to transfer $10,000 around and that's the number they look at?
Virtually every person that I speak to who's undergoing an audit feels exactly the way you feel right now. In fact, I had a gentleman in the office yesterday, and he's like, why are they bugging me again?
I think most people feel that way.
When we're looking at his tax returns, it's like, well, see this number? That number's really high. See that number? That number's really high. Oh, and by the way, you file a Schedule C, which is the, the most heavily audited tax form there is.
What is the C again? I don't
Schedule
remember.
C is for a sole proprietorship,
Oh.
claiming their income and expenses.
I don't know. How do you feel about that, Pat? I think it's irritating. Like, I don't think Big Brother should be watching me if I want to. Who cares if I want to transfer money from one bank account to the next?
I feel that I'm going to stay away from the Schedule C.
That's good advice right there. Stay away if you can.
And I know it's a little bit off topic, and I was just curious if you knew, if you've heard anything since all these changes are coming and we're talking about living and working abroad. What about for people that outsource stuff to other countries? Because there are a lot of people, including me, that do outsource some stuff to other countries.
As far as I know, you don't have to issue a 1099, right? Because they don't have
they're not a citizen.
They don't have an I-10 or a Social Security number. And so as far as I know, that's just contract labor.
Think we'll see some changes in that in the future? Too
Probably.
early to say. All right, you're listening to the IRS Solution Attorney Show. Stick around. We're going to talk more about if you have a tax problem, your passport could be frozen. Don't miss a show. Back in a minute.
Are you suffering from IRS problems? Do you owe back taxes you can't pay? Is your paycheck or bank account being levied? Or maybe you haven't filed tax returns in years and simply don't know what to do. This is Darrin Mish to tell you that if you're tired of IRS problems hanging over your head and are ready for a fresh start, we may be able to help. Call the law offices of Darrin Mish at 888-GET-MISH, 888-GET-MISH. I can help you file old tax returns, work to release tax liens or stop wage levies, even negotiate deals to pay off back taxes at a discount, sometimes for pennies on the dollar. Hey, let's face it, these days it's not hard to get into tax trouble. A divorce, failed business, health problems, you name it. The point is, IRS problems may be solved if you're willing to take the first step. Call for a free consultation at 888-GET-MISH. That's 888-438-6474. Or go to the web at getirshelp.com, because the one sure thing is, IRS problems don't solve themselves. So get Mish. 888-438-6474. Principal Office, Tampa.
Welcome back to the IRS Solution Attorney Show. I am the IRS Solution Attorney, Darrin Mish.
And I'm your co-host, Katrina Melo. Don't pay attention to my little chipmunk jinx.
Today we're talking about how if you have a significant tax problem from the IRS owing $50,000 or more and you don't take care of it, the IRS, or actually the State Department to be technical, will eventually revoke your passport, which will cause you problems going on vacation or going on international business travel.
We got to try to track some of these people down, Darrin, just because, this is the topic of the show. So we got to track a few of them down and have them on the show.
Oh, for sure.
Don't you think? This would be so fun.
I'll start getting these calls almost immediately, would be my guess, is I'll start to get some passport calls, immediately, and I'll have to figure out how to get it, how to work with the State Department and get it all undone. It's important to note that it's not going to be the IRS that revokes the passports. What's going to happen is the IRS is going to, I guess, certify is the word, to the State Department that there's a problem, and then the State Department is going to go ahead and issue you like they're going to send you a letter. And, they're going to tell you, look, you've got X number of days. I think it's going to be 90 days to allow you to resolve the tax problem, which could be enough time, theoretically, because all you have to do is either pay it, that's not going to be that common.
Write a check for 50 G's.
Yeah, that's not that common, but there's going to be people that will, just pay it. B, they can go ahead and enter into an offer and compromise, so that, should keep your passport intact. Or C, enter into an installment agreement, which will also keep the passport intact. But I can tell you, having dealt with people who owe taxes, to the IRS for about 18 years now, there will be a significant number of people who do nothing or don't get the letter, especially in Florida. And
I wonder how many of your people you're going to be knee deep in the middle of.
They will wait.
Try to take that little vacation and call you from wherever, Darrin.
They will wait until they're in the in line at the ticket counter to go to Cuba or Mexico or England or Germany or wherever, and they're going to be turned away, and it's going to be really sad.
So
Or they
does
just-
your 888 get Mish number work internationally?
It does not work internationally. So if you're listening to this internationally on a podcast, you want to call us at 813-229-7100, or you can go to the website at getirshelp.com, and there's a message feature and whatnot on there.
I would just stay put. I wouldn't go anywhere or do anything. I would just think, well, I'm happy where I'm at. I'm saving money.
I'm sure that's going to be good for the travel economy. Just everybody who owes taxes, hey, no travel for you, like the soup Nazi.
So you're saying if you're like in the Dominican, Pat, you're just going to stay?
Well, no, I'm not going to go there. And
you're
to
not
start
going anywhere.
with. No. Hey, do we have anything to give away today?
We do, in fact. The first 5 callers get a free rooster.
What?
I knew that was going to throw a
Where
curve on
did
her.
that come from? Are you guys
Out of left
trying
field?
You guys are trying to.
Well,
punk
as you
me.
know, I live on a small farm, and I remember I did the big announcement a few months ago. where
Not
I-
a small farm. It's a nice farm.
Yeah. Anyway, well, it's all relative, right?
We got chickens.
So we have
and ducks.
chickens, and I've got a surplus of roosters. So if anybody wants a rooster, and I don't even care if you eat the rooster, I wouldn't personally eat it, but they're big, nice, healthy, about 10-pound roosters. They're
What do you
nice
think
to
you
people.
buy from the grocery store? You think it's not a rooster?
Call me ignorant, but I
Yeah.
never thought about that. I don't think so. I thought all eating chickens were hens. That's been my understanding.
I'm so not a farm person, so I could have this wrong, but I didn't see why you couldn't eat a.
It's a rotisserie rooster.
I don't know.
Those things that are sitting
Maybe.
there in
Usually what
Publix.
happens, my understanding is that
If you
male
know,
chicks-
can you just call and help us figure this
male
out?
chicks are euthanized, pretty much at birth, because they serve, like a lot of men, like me, they serve no real purpose, so they just get euthanized. Anyway, bad joke. Anyway, the first 5
Oh my
callers get a free
God.
rooster. You have to come pick it up, though.
888-404-1010. I can't believe we're giving away roosters.
That's one of the
You're
fun
not
parts about the
serious, are
show.
you?
No, I'm actually serious. I got to get
88
rid of them. They're taking up too much room.
888-404-1010. Let us know if you want a rooster.
Check your zoning laws, though. You're probably not allowed to have roosters. That's the problem.
My wife just called and said, "Don't you dare."
That's funny.
And they crow a lot. Now, I don't have a problem with that
now,
because
don't
they're way
you have
far from
some
the house.
attorney disclaimer or something about giving away a chicken on the air or a rooster?
I'm drawing a blank. I don't really think I have
Maybe.
a problem with giving away a rooster. If you want to have a rooster, just call the show.
You just have to come and pick it up. Yeah, we're
you
not
don't pick
gonna-
up
yeah.
today. I don't have it.
So are you bringing the rooster to Beasley? We might have to
that
let
would be
Charlie know
awesome.
about
We can
that.
let the gals up front, do the giveaway just like they do for
They're
everything
going to
else.
like that in the prize
That's
closet.
going to be awesome. The other problem with live animals is they have a tendency to, make a mess.
I'll tell you what I did do working at a radio station one year. I found a hurt pelican on the interstate when I was working, traffic, and I brought it in. And I did bring the bird into the radio station, and they said, "Where are we going to put that?" And we put it in the shower and closed the door. I will warn you never to bring any kind of animal, especially a fowl type of bird animal, because they don't like it in there, and they start doing one thing or 2 things. And when we opened that door the next day, it was everywhere.
I bet y'all took a shower right in there.
No one went back in that room for a long time. So they're not going to let any roosters come into Beasley.
We've done some odd shows over the past year and a half or so. This is
Somehow
about
they-
the weirdest show we've ever done.
They always involve farm animals. Yeah, I don't have any.
If it's live and Pat's involved, it's going to be more colorful. It's going to be better. That's
We've
for
talked
sure.
from the Florida State Fair to cruises to, flying and roosters, and we cover everything.
To
here.
moving around 10 grand just to make somebody watch you?
Right.
We left that part out. Anyway, no, but seriously, it's going to make news. Watch. Have your guy troll the, scoop the media feeds and like Twitter, see what you can find for people that have those frozen passports that can't come home.
Oh, I thought you were going to say frozen rooster. I kid
No,
you not. That's
frozen
what I thought you were gonna
roosters.
say. But I'll probably have some pretty soon, and I'll see if I can get them to come on the air, and maybe we can get some of the the video media involved as well, because it's going to be a pretty good story. They're going to be like, family of 17 has their cruise tickets and they're ready to go, and the guy tries to use his passport, and they're like, negative.
So you think they're going to get them coming or going?
Probably both. If I was enforcing the law, I would get them going, because you don't want to strand somebody, on another continent or something. You don't want to strand them in a different country, but it's going to be really effective, at least for those types of people.
Wait a minute. How are you going to strand them in another country if you don't deal with it till you get back? We talked about them knocking on the door at 7 a.m.
No, my point is there's people that are overseas now that traveled on their passport before the law was even passed, and they haven't come back. And when they come back into the port of entry, wherever, and they're going through, customs or ICE or whatever they call it, the guy's going to be like, hey, you have your passport's been revoked, and thank you. I'll be keeping this, and you need to, call the State Department and get it, taken care of.
So what do? Like, you can't get on a plane and go back to wherever.
I guess you're not going to be able to go back to where you came from, even if you live there. It's going to be a problem. You're going to have to call me.
Hold you somewhere?
You're going to have to call me and ask me how we're going to deal with that and get taken care of. It doesn't have to be just me, but you're going to have to call the IRS and deal with the problem. And one of the problems with the IRS right now and calling them is they're so dramatically understaffed. The wait times are insane. Most people who I speak with who tried to call the IRS and handle the problem themselves actually had to hang up. They gave up. Either they gave up or the IRS did what they call a courtesy disconnect. Now, this is like this is one of my favorite terms that the IRS uses, a courtesy disconnect. We've had you on hold for so long. We're going to go ahead and hang up on you now. How does that make any sense? That only makes sense in the land of government bureaucracy.
Exactly.
Well, it's not going to happen anymore because you hear a lot in media now that they just hired an army of investigators.
Yeah, there are competitors of mine that I hear their radio commercials just about every hour when I listen to the radio that say that they've just hired an army of new enforcers. That's actually not true. There's a hiring freeze with the federal government, and they haven't hired anybody in quite a while. Now,
so
there are some that
they're
are
lying on their commercial? That's what I'm hearing.
Well, there is. We haven't talked about this on the air yet, but the IRS is going to be contracting collection out to private collection agencies, and there could be armies of those people being hired. But the last time they tried that, it was a miserable failure, and the people violated the law and violated people's their rights and all kinds of things. And that's what's going to happen again. Is it's going to be another miserable failure. It's not going to work out, but we'll see what happens. We'll do another show on the private collection agencies at some point in the future, and we can talk about what to do if you get one of these private collections agencies calling you to collect your taxes.
Not only do you fix their problems, you give them the truth.
How does that work to you? Like if it's a private collection agency and they violate the collection laws? Because debt collectors do it all the time.
Yeah, I think there's going to be some problems with the FD. I think it's the FDCPA, which is the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. It's almost a guarantee those private collection agencies will violate that act because it's very it's very specific about what they can and can't do. For example, you can't call after 9 p.m. and you can't call if somebody's written you and asked you not to call them and things like that.
And at work, you can't hound them at work, especially when they've asked you not to.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of rules, and then the taxpayer actually has a right to sue those debt collectors for each instance of the violation of the act for $1,000. So it's nothing to see a case where there's 38 violations, for example. Now, the problem is it's litigation. You have to sue the people, and then once you sue them and you get a judgment, then you have to collect the money. So it's not the gold mine that it sounds like it.
But there are attorneys that do just that.
Sure. There are attorneys.
Yeah, we've had them on the show before.
I was out to dinner last Friday, and the discussion started. Everything is great and everything's nice, and the wife came along and whispered to the husband, "We don't have a checking account anymore because the IRS has frozen it, and I can't talk to anyone till Monday."
And this person hasn't called me yet? What kind of friend are you, Pat?
We've talked about this. People literally.
I didn't try to get involved, but I could.
That does happen, where.
No, I saw it firsthand. It does happen. So you talk about that all the time that they freeze it. It happens.
So they were going to pay at dinner, and the wife's like, no debit card. Sorry.
Yeah.
Well, that's why you always carry. That's why you always have to carry an American Express, just in case.
Did you pick up the tab, Pat?
No, I excused myself to the bathroom and never came back.
he grew some alligator arms real quick. So let's talk about real quick who does the law affect? Well, the new law affects anyone who owes more than $50,000 to the IRS, assuming they're not in an offer and compromise that's pending, and there's no installment agreement, or they don't have a pending innocent spouse claim. So basically, anyone who has $50,000 in debt or more and isn't trying to proactively deal with it, they're subject to having their passport revoked. Now, the other thing that's important to note is, well, what happens if your passport has been revoked? What do you got to do to get it back? Well,
Yeah, that is a good question. What do you have to do to get it back? And how long of a process is that?
it's not super clear to me yet how that's going to work. I don't know if you're going to be able to just enter into an installment agreement, pay $500 a month or whatever, and you'll get your passport back. I think that's how it's going to work. But they may very well say, no, now that we've revoked it, we've gone to that trouble, we want you to go ahead and full pay or do an offer and compromise and full pay that before we're going to go ahead and reissue the passport.
New rules. I have a feeling that you're going to be figuring out some of the stuff as you go.
And then there's going to be definitely some lawsuits over this because there's some things that I think are unconstitutional. Freedom to travel. I don't know if that's in the Constitution. I don't think it is, but it seems like something that,
I would think.
a right that we have.
I think you should do a barter with the first person that has their IRS tax issue revoked. Like they come on the air and tell their story.
No barter.
No barter. No barter. He'll hook you up, though. He'll do a good
problem is
job.
the barter just makes the tax return complicated. That's why I'm not interested in
Makes
bartering.
sense. Well, tell your story. Maybe we'll give you a discount. Maybe. I'll work on them.
Okay.
We'll work on them. You're listening to the IRS Solution Attorney Show. We're already at the end of the third segment. We'll be back in a minute.
Welcome back to the IRS Solution Attorney Show. It's me. It's the IRS Solution Attorney, Darrin T. Mish.
I know, but Pat popped the microphones a little bit early, and it.
By the way, 4 of your roosters are gone.
Fantastic. We have such an awesome, loyal audience that apparently likes roosters, too.
So I'm Katrina Maidel, I'm your co-host. Pat George back there on the board making this show fun.
We would have got rid of all 5, but the one lady that called, she goes, how many eggs can I get out of that one?
Okay, that's worse than the question that I would ask.
Now, this is actually funny. The term for a rooster that's not, mature yet is a cockerel. And so on Craigslist, I put up an ad, for 5 cockerels and pictures. And I have gotten calls where people are like, how many eggs does it lay? Well,
you should tell them it varies.
Let me explain.
You should tell them it varies and let them pick the chicken up.
You're like, this is the worst darn chicken I ever had. All it does is eat.
The bad part about it, when it starts getting fat and they start squeezing it, they get more than an egg.
Oh, my gosh.
All right. So back to the topic of the show today, which is if you have significant tax debt, which means $50,000 or more to the IRS, and you don't deal with it proactively, they will revoke your passport. If you live in one of 5 states, Illinois, Minnesota, Missouri, New Mexico, and Washington, you cannot fly using your driver's license. So you must have a passport. And if your passport is revoked, you will not be able to fly domestically either. So that's the big story of the show today.
You better take care of that tax problem. Call Darrin at 888-GET-MISH.
If your passport is confiscated, you have about 5 different options. You can call a tax attorney like me at 888-438-6474.
Whatever that number is, 888-GET-MISH.
Or you can pay your tax debt off with the credit card. That could be a solution.
They take credit cards,
Yeah,
the IRS?
they absolutely take credit cards. You could get a cash advance, and you could come up with the money and pay it off. You could refi your house, provided they haven't filed a tax lien yet. You could refi your house. And
that ain't happening.
You can pay off the tax debt. That's potentially a solution. You could try to enter into an installment agreement on your own, or you could try to enter into an offer and compromise on your own. An offer and compromise is an IRS program where you can make a deal to settle for less, and that's what we talk about a lot. We did a
whole
on this
show on that
when we talk about the IRS train wreck of the week. Is usually it's usually an offer and compromise story, and today's is as well. So, an offer and compromise can be a great deal. Sometimes you can settle for very little on the dollar. But it's not one of those things I don't think that most people are capable of doing on their own. You could probably fill out the paperwork on your own, but if anything goes wrong, and something will, then you're really not going to know exactly what to do. Kind of like last night, we were trying to fix we have a freezer that's broken, and we bought the new motor and a new fan and everything, and we were trying to figure out how to do it. And I'm actually not sure if it got done or not because my wife was working on it, and
Heather probably fixed it.
I went to bed. She probably did. But if anything, there was something that we had a question. We're like, what does that wire do? That wire's not in the YouTube video.
Oh, my gosh.
It's kind of like, handling your own tax problem. It's very similar, I think.
Yeah, if you call the guy, he'll get to it pretty quick. So what's your ballpark estimate guess on when the first case comes up where they've frozen the passport for the IRS tax debt?
Let's say 4th of July. You mean my first case? I think around...
Settled 4th of July or showing up?
I bet you the first one will show up around July 4th. So it's about that time. It's the time for the IRS train wreck of the week. This is the segment of the show where I talk about somebody who came in and they were literally a train wreck. They had all kinds of tax debt. They didn't know what to do. The IRS was harassing them. And typically, after we get involved, they end up smelling like a rose. This case was no different. This particular gentleman lives in Louisiana. It's always fun to talk to him because he's got a real heavy Cajun accent. Really nice guy. He's in construction, and he ended up, like a lot of construction guys, he ended up getting way behind on his tax debt. His problem started in tax year 2000 and went all the way to tax year 2015. He racked up over $252,000 in tax debt.
No passport for that boy.
Isn't he done by that point? Like he's all exempt because of how old it is?
Well, no, because a tax professional before me got involved and filed all those old tax returns that were older than 6 years. Remember?
Really?
Remember that rule? Like if it's more than 6 years old, you don't have to file the return. Well, somebody before me got a hold of them and filed a whole bunch of old tax returns. And
so now because he filed them, he's subject to deal with all that, right?
Once they're filed, you have to deal with it. So he owed over $252,000. Now, it's important to note that the IRS they don't necessarily need to get all that money from that taxpayer. They're way more involved in a case like this of him just getting back into the system, because you just saw right there in my example, he's been out of the system for 16 years. So what we did is we filed an offer in compromise, and we got him current for 2016. I mean, this was monumental, meaning we got him to pay estimated tax payments for 2016. This was monumental. He had not paid taxes, federal income taxes, for 16 years. So we got him current. We filed the offer in compromise, and we offered some trivial amount. I don't remember, $1,000, $500, something like that. And the IRS didn't take that amount. Okay, that's in all candor. They did not take that super low amount, but they did counter offer $15,340. And my client wasn't absolutely thrilled with it. But once I explained to him that we did the math and that's 6 pennies on the dollar, he got a little chipper, and he decided that that's a pretty darn good deal. You know, $15,000 and change for $252,000.
You think sometimes they forget that original number?
Oh, absolutely, positively. In some of these cases like this, where it went from like $1,000 offer to like $15,000, I had to remind them, like, look, if you can pay that within the terms, which is 5 months from the acceptance of the offer, you need to take that deal. That is the best deal you're ever going to get in your life, and you know, it's unbelievable.
You probably need to bring them in, give them a little visual, like literally have this little piece of drawn poop with $1,000, put it on the wall and go, this is what we're doing. It's probably not going to stick, but we're going to try. You love that, don't you? You weren't expecting that.
I can't even believe you use that word on my show. But anyway.
But that's what you're doing, theoretically.
So this gentleman is very happy, and we did change his life because he's been looking over his shoulder for a long time. He's been really worried about it for a long time. And when push came to shove, when it was explained to him, he's like, yep, I'm going to do what it takes to get it done. We're going to take care of it.
Yeah, because that percentage is ridiculous.
So I'm really happy for him. You know, I think the biggest problem that I enjoy solving is the mental, emotional stress components of these problems. I mean, can you imagine owing $252,000 to the IRS?
Nope.
Over a period of 16 years?
Nope.
You know how that's going to impact your relationships, your life, your health,
I like
everything.
to cruise. It wouldn't work for me.
And then you helped him down to $15,000. That's chicken feed.
That's rooster feed, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, because when it's $15,000, it's less than $50,000, so technically he could go on a cruise, right?
Well, absolutely. Once he's entered into offer and compromise and he pays it, then they're not going to revoke his passport.
How long does he have to pay it again?
It's 5 months from the date of formal acceptance of the offer. So he'll be in decent shape.
What's formal acceptance? A letter in the mail or the call?
Yeah, you get a letter in the mail that says we formally accepted it. It's all the T's are crossed and all the I's are.
So do they let you know verbally what they're taking before they mail a letter or no?
Yeah, what happens is, in this case is a good example. It's not actually accepted yet. It's just recommended for acceptance. It has to go through a layer of management and an IRS lawyer because of the amount. Everybody is pretty much going to rubber stamp this thing unless there's some major problem, and then he's going to get the letter in the mail. So
that's probably months, right?
About 45 days, 45, 60 days.
Yeah, that's quite a bit of time. Well, you're listening to the IRS Solution Show, and we are out of time.
We are, in fact, out of time.
888-GET-MISH.
GetIRSHelp.com. You can download the podcast at the Apple Store or the Android Store as well.
We'll be back next week for This Week.
We are out.